The Vice President of the United States makes the first really top-level visit to the European Parliament by a US politician for 25 years. We'll be talking to a senior MEP about EU-US relations. The controversial discharge of the 2008 budget goes through, but discharge of the Council's share is postponed. And who should pick up the bill for air security? The Vice President of the United States has been on a whistle-stop tour of Brussels that took in NATO, the Commission and Council before he flew on to Spain to meet the King and Prime Minister. But he also paid a welcome visit to the European Parliament, where his address to members formed a vital part of his trip, as Andreas Rugal reports.
Vice President Joe Biden is the most senior US politician to visit the European Parliament since Ronald Reagan addressed the House 25 years ago. Smiles all around, of course, and the inevitable handshake. In his speech, the Vice President emphasized the renewed strength of the relationship.
The Obama-Biden administration has no doubt about the need for and strongly supports a vibrant European Union.
Mr. Biden reminded members of the historic links between the EU and US, but he also called for more support over Afghanistan and for Europe to help put pressure on Iran over its nuclear program. Stressing his belief in privacy, he also urged members to reverse the rejection of the terrorist finance tracking program over data protection concerns.
It has provided critical leads to counterterrorism investigations on both sides of the Atlantic, disrupting plots and ultimately saving lives. It has built in redundancies that ensure personal information is respected and used only for counterterrorism purposes.
So, three main messages, but the most important one perhaps was unspoken.
It's a clear signal that the Bush era is over, that we're no longer going to be dictated to by the United States as long as Obama and Joe Biden are in the White House.
Mr. Biden did stress transatlantic interdependence, and that was certainly a message that struck home.
I don't see so that Americans in need of support of Europe more as Europe needs support of America.
The Obama White House, it seems, is determined to restore good relations with Europe.
Well, earlier today, Andreas Rugal spoke about transatlantic relations with Janine Hennis-Plasschaert, who's a member of the delegation for relations with the US and who wrote the report recommending rejection of the SWIFT agreement on financial data transfers.
Janine Hennis-Plasschaert, now a new agreement has to be found. Negotiations have just started, but you're not negotiating. It's the European Commission that does it. Nevertheless, you've just been to the United States with a delegation. Why did you go there?
We met the State Treasurer, Timothy Geithner, we met the Attorney General. They were all very committed and listening to us. So I hope that the message we had, that if it's about European data that should be extracted on European soil, on the European safeguards, that message came through actually last week.
Yeah, you as Vice President Joe Biden has just addressed the plenary here. What did you make of his speech?
He said something that I heard already last week, saying that we're back in business of listening to our allies, which is a good message because transatlantic partnership is not about one asking the other just to do whatever, but it's about equal partnership and addressing concerns on both sides and coming to mutual acceptable agreements and policies, etc. So this is a clear message. He also obviously addressed the terrorist finance tracking program in several ways. It's a great concern from them because without a doubt the tracking of terrorist financing is important to fight terrorists. We don't deny that, but it should be in line with our rules and laws. And this is a message that he understood clearly, in my view. But again, the negotiations will show us whether it's just theory or really practice.
Janine Hennis-Plasschaert, thank you very much.
This week, MEPs voted to approve the management to grant the discharge, as it's called in Eurospeak, of the EU's budget for 2008 for most of the institutions, but not quite all. Hugh Weinstock's report is voiced by Joanna Gill.
Though the Icelandic volcano continues to disrupt airspace, it no longer impeded MEPs from signing off the 2008 budget for the EU institutions. Having delayed the vote from the virtually empty volcano-affected Strasbourg plenary in April, MEPs finally voted on it this Wednesday. With €1.29 billion at their disposal, MEPs were aware of their role as the taxpayers' watchdog.
The taxpayer has to have the means to see that those public means are spent well. We couldn't do better, that is for sure, but we did already good things as well. That is also mentioned in the report. I think it is because of a rather critical budget control committee that we managed to change things in this Parliament.
The only agency funded by the EU whose budget was not signed off was Europe's cross-border crime-fighting college, CEPOL.
There are many irregularities concerning public procurement, recruitment, recording the same assets twice, and many others.
The Council's budget still hangs in the balance. MEPs delayed the vote on their budget again, not due to ash clouds, but smokescreens coming from the Council itself. MEPs are frustrated by the lack of answers on key questions concerning their spending.
Does the Council really think that they can get approval of a budget discharge from a Parliament which cannot get its questions answered? I mean, this is to expect a rubber stamp.
Though MEPs agreed that the 2008 budget spending was better than in 2007, there is still room for improvement. The Council has until May 17th to get their house in order, as MEPs hope to vote the final part of the budget discharge 2008 without further delay.
Nigel Farage, the UK Independence Party MEP and co-leader of the EFD group, was injured when the light plane in which he was travelling crashed shortly after takeoff on the morning of Britain's general election, in which he's a candidate. It's believed the banner the plane was towing may have become entangled in the tail fin. Mr. Farage was treated in hospital for head injuries, but not detained. Now the rest of today's news in brief.
Calls for calm. Today, the European Central Bank tried to reassure skittish markets. The ECB president stated that the Greek crisis and Portugal's budget problems were not comparable. Greece and Portugal are not in the same boat, he said. He dismissed any suggestion of Greek default as simply being out of the question and advised that the upturn in 2010 would be moderate and uncertainty would remain high. Must try harder. A third of cancers in Europe could be avoided. MEPs believe that the EU could do more to support screening and prevention. They're demanding campaigns to promote healthier lifestyles and to reduce the environmental factors at the workplace. They also want countries to work together to give a helping hand to the newest member states. Greater numbers. As part of the changes brought in by the Lisbon Treaty, 18 new MEPs will join their parliament. But in order to let them take their seats, a treaty amendment had to be voted. MEPs had given their approval without the need to convene a formal meeting. It will be left up to member states to ratify these proposals.
No more referring to them as ghosts after this, I suppose. Body scanners are the latest weapon in the constant fight against terrorists boarding planes in their attempts to create murder and mayhem. But after putting up with a long-running ban on carry-on liquids and all the petty humiliations of modern security checks, MEPs say passengers shouldn't also pick up the hefty bill for the scanners. Margarita Zwosser prepared this report.
Each body scanner costs about 150,000 to 200,000 euro, according to the aviation industry. For some governments, it's the latest barrier against the terrorist threat. But who should pay for that? For the MEPs, the cost of this new technology should be met by the member states and not by the passengers. The Parliament has voted with a very large majority for a directive that goes further than the European Commission proposal. Aviation security measures that go beyond basic EU requirements should be paid by member states, not by airlines or consumers.
I think with that report, travelling might be a little bit cheaper for passengers at the end, yes, and that's also a big success. And it's more transparency everywhere, and that's also a very good development.
However, this vote will not be the last step. Most of the governments are against this proposal that will require public financing. At the moment, the member states are free to apply their own rules. In most of the cases, airports pass security costs to the airlines, and airlines pass the bill to passengers. For the Voice of Europe's airport, this draft goes in the right direction.
In most parts of the world, aviation security is paid for by states. Europe is the exception.
Metal and explosive detectors, hand searches, liquid screeners. Since 9/11/2001, the costs for aviation security has increased from 8 to 35% of airports' operating costs, according to the European Airport Trade Body.
I wonder how many people have been put off flying altogether by the very intrusive security measures and the resulting long queues they cause. Wouldn't be so bad if all airports followed the same procedures. Mind you, no measures can protect you from delays caused by Icelandic volcanoes. Keep up to date with our news on europoltv.eu and join us next time. But for now, goodbye.